She joins me now to make her case. Apple stock, by the way, up 20% this month. Laura, this is interesting, not just because it's Apple, but also because Amazon has this similar advertising story where it's ads within its own ecosystem that have a clearer line of effectiveness. Is that what you're looking at here? And really, how big a business is that potentially for Apple?
So the TAM is about $450 billion, which would double Apple's total revenue. Their services revenue is about $80 billion out of the 320. So it would really accelerate services revenue. And the importance of that is it has 70% margins, which is twice the margin of the hardware business. So it would really accelerate earnings per share growth much faster than revenue growth. And Apple trades on earnings per share or on a PE.
How do you get that $450 billion TAM? You're looking at global mobile advertising writ large, right? Not just within Apple's own ecosystem. And Apple historically has been pretty hesitant to really engage in the sort of advertising practices that would allow them to grab a larger TAM. They want to have more control, less privacy invading targeting, they would say, and keep it small.
I agree 100% with that. But we saw this in Netflix, who for 10 years said we will never do advertising. And then last quarter said we have to have advertising because growth is slowing in the economy. And advertising at such a huge total addressable market is sort of silly to walk away from if you're trying to create shareholder value. So you've got a $400 billion TAM at a 70% margin. Apple needs to go after that. And really the catalyst here is that since Apple has changed its privacy settings, a lot of its app developers are yelling and screaming because their revenue fell if they were ad-driven. So Apple is trying to step in and solve the ad revenue problem for them, for its app developers that are ad-driven, by creating a privacy-first ad platform that it runs so it's not sharing the privacy information of its holders. It will ask permission, of course, but then that will solve the revenue problem for its ad-driven apps on its ecosystem.
Okay, so we can expect to see Apple using its advertising system to drive downloads and purchases within the App Store, similar to we're seeing Amazon using advertising to drive purchases within its own ecosystem. But what's going to be the first signal if Apple's actually showing ambition beyond that stuff, the app download ecosystem, where that big TAM really is?
So I would say that its TAM, it's probably trying to replace out of services of 20 billion, I would guess 7 billion is advertising today, and it's probably down to 5. So it's trying to make sure that app developers don't abandon iOS and go to Android instead because they can't make money on iOS devices. So I would guess this is primarily near-term a defensive move to make sure that app developers can earn money on the iOS platform, or they're going to abandon iOS because they need to make money. So that's first, it's going to be defensive. After it solves that problem, then it might move to the bigger ecosystem. But I don't actually think I don't think that has to be the main driver of Apple's strategy here. It could just be to make sure app developers stay on the iOS ecosystem, which sells the next piece of hardware.
So do you think they will use Apple Maps to drive local advertising? One could argue they already have Maps as a potential search vehicle, right? They've got Apple Pay on the other end of it. Do they make the connection in between the Maps and the Pay to actually show attribution for a transaction?
The kind of jobs they're listing for are much more standardized 30-second spots programmatically. So what you're talking about is a very sophisticated ad unit where you're actually dealing with businesses and tying it to purchases, which is commerce, which is like 3 steps down the line. So right now, I'm going to go with just sort of standardized 30-second ads, super simple, because Apple's new to this business. And actually, it's a really hard tech stack to build. I would guess it will take them 2 to 3 years to get into this business if they stick with it. But I think they're being forced to because I think iOS developers are abandoning them unless they fix this.
Okay. So no competing directly with Google in the short term, at least. Laura Martin, thank you.